Alright everyone, we start off today first with a request to everyone. I had to reinstall everything on this computer, and now it keeps doing the update bullshit. So if somebody could DM me on Twitter with a surefire way to literally lock everything down, block every update, and preferably revert it to like the old school Windows 10 look as opposed to like the latter day Windows 10 that's kind of a hybrid between 10 and 11 and looks more like 11 but thankfully isn't with all the telemetry and shit. That'd be appreciated. We'll get right into it though. Ron DeSantis signing off on an anti-squatting law in Florida. I support this. What you're going to get as you have more and more homelessness, impoverished people, and also illegals in the country is increased rates of people attempting to take advantage of state laws with regards to squatting. What that basically is you've entered a property and you've just decided to make it yours, and in some cases there are a few elements of squatting law in some states that make sense. For example, and it doesn't have to be with a structure itself, it can also be with land. Let's say that you don't mow your lawn ever. You completely neglect it, and your neighbor comes over and mows the lawn on that side of the property for like 10 fucking years. Well, they've materially improved and maintained an element of your property. You didn't tell them not to do so, or attempt to make any sort of arrangement whereby they couldn't do that. And so at some point, under certain state laws, they can claim the land effectively was ceded to me. Here's proof that I was mowing it for the last 10 years. I've expended X amount of number of hours of time, X amount of money on fuel and use of the tractor, etc., and that makes sense. Squatting generally, though, is more defined as, hey, you're dwelling in this property, you haven't gotten permission, and in some states it's very difficult to actually remove the person. Now, you've got groups that can go out and remove squatters. In some states, though, this is quasi-illegal. That's the problem. In Florida now, it won't be. In Florida now, if somebody's attempting to squat on your property, they can be physically removed. You can have some strong dudes go in there and just pull them out and, toss them onto the ground, basically. And it's no longer going to be illegal to do so. And that really should be the thing. It should be absolutely understood. If it's your property, if you own it, you have the right to determine who is going to be on it or not on it. The only exception is, let's say you have some scumlord renting out to somebody and then just tries to kick them out randomly even though they're paying the rent or something like that, and that does happen. Having some renters protections makes sense, but it's not the same as squatting. Recently what we've seen is that groups that are illegally in the country, or bands of homeless people, of which there are unfortunately more and more, are taking up residence in properties that are owned, but they're not currently physically occupied, to the point where apparently, in some cases, people will hire sitters, actually, to be on the property when they're not physically there. Like, let's say you've got somebody, they got their fucking townhouse, they're going to Maui for the next month, they're going on vacation, and so they have somebody, sort of make sure that they're in the home at the time, because then, of course, you can call the police and say, oh, somebody's trying to trespass, there's 3 people out there, and they're demanding to be let in, and I don't want to let them in. I'm a house sitter. Nobody should have to go to those lengths, although it does make sense not to leave your property unoccupied generally. Like, I'm phobic about having nobody physically in this house at any given time because I've got all sorts of shit in here, and so typically I try to arrange schedules and stuff like that so at least one person at any given time is on the property. Not because I'm afraid of squatters, I'm more afraid of maybe a home invasion or something like that. I got some valuable stuff here. All my work is tied up in this office, etc., etc., and, so I go out of my way to make sure that it's safe. Florida's law makes sense. Ron DeSantis getting another win, by the way. I told people when he dropped out and endorsed Trump, if it was a lackluster endorsement, I would no longer be teasing him, and I will hold to that. When he does something like this, something that makes fucking sense, he should be praised for it. That's the other thing I wanted to dovetail into this. All too often we get fickle about politicians, and then so we won't give them credit when they do something good, simply because they did something that pissed us off. Like, in the case of Ron DeSantis, not seeing the writing on the wall early on enough maybe, his slightly inept run campaign, or 269 there, I think it was. I can't remember exactly the moniker of the law. You know, the one with regards to maybe some anti-free speech maneuvers. But if he goes after Disney for DEI bullshit, and the fact that it's a monumental corporate monopoly effectively in Florida, or if he passes an anti-squatting law, these are good things, and so he should be praised for them. Hell, even if you ascribe it to broken clock mode or something like that, give the man credit when he does something well, and the hope is that he does more things well. I'm doing a fairly good job as governor of Florida overall, and I celebrate this because now we've got groups of people that are openly encouraging squatting and trying to inform people about how to actually successfully squat on a property and all of this stuff, like that Moreno moron who's now on the run from ICE. I talked about that yesterday. While this is not actually going to influence large numbers of people to go and attempt to squat on properties, it is becoming more of a problem. I think it's more about rampant homelessness in general. And not all of those homeless people, by the way, are illegally in the country. There are hundreds of thousands of perfectly law-abiding U.S. citizens that are homeless as well. You've got fentanyl, the fentanyl crisis. You've got Bidenomics causing people to get really, really fucked economically, to the point where somebody who makes like maybe just a base salary, I mean, they were like, oh, I can have 5 roommates or I can buy a tent. Well, that underpass looks cozy. Hey, I'm in a warm climate, so I'll probably be okay. This is the reality for millions and millions of people in the United States, which should not be a thing. It did not need to get this bad. There are ways to solve these problems that politicians are virtually never even willing to discuss. The GOP says, well, fuck them. And the Democrats say, well, here's some welfare breadcrumbs. Let's inflate the currency to pay for it so that the welfare breadcrumbs don't mean anything. What wonderful solutions to the problem of poverty in the United States. You would think that in a nation this wealthy, you could probably have less of a problem than some fucking favela in Venezuela. That in some parts of the United States, it basically is turning into Venezuela. So that might be part of the problem. So Florida's anti-squatting law makes sense. It is decent in nature. It should be legal to physically remove people from your own property. You have not consented to rent to them. You have not consented for them to enter the property. And yet you show up to your home, you're like, who are you? Oh, look at me. I am the homeowner now. That's about all. Peace out.